Can't see any of the buttons now that
Yay.
There we go.
Hey, so hello everyone. My name is Anika. I'm a Simply Neuroscience team member, and I am a part of the Accessible Axon Initiative. Today, I have the honor of introducing Dr. Jared Cooney Horvath, who will be giving a presentation on Your Brain, Your Life: How the Brain Truly Works to Make Sense of Reality. Now, Dr. Jared Cooney Horvath, PhD, MD, is a neuroscientist, educator, and author of the best-selling book, Stop Talking, Start Influencing: 12 Insights from Brain Science to Make Your Message Stick. He has conducted research and lectured at Harvard University, Harvard Medical School, the University of Melbourne, and over 250 schools internationally. He currently serves as director of LME Global, a team dedicated to bringing the latest brain and behavioral research to teachers, students, and parents alike. A couple of quick housekeeping notes. Please send any questions you have in the chat. We will have around 5 to 10 minutes for Q&A at the end of the presentation. Therefore, please refrain from unmuting yourself during the presentation. Without further ado, I will give the virtual stage to Dr. Jared Cooney Horvath.
Yay, hooray. Thank you. Hello, everybody. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with me and for having me. So yeah, I'm just a heads up. I'm living in Australia now, but clearly not from Australia. I'm American. So anytime today, if I say anything wonky or some idiom that you don't understand, because I think you all are international, just type it in, let me know in the chat, and I'll try and clean that up. Now, problem, real quick, before I kick off, since I'm sharing my screen, I can't see anyone anymore. So I'm going to keep an eye on the time to make sure I give us enough time for questions and stuff at the end. But anytime you have a thought or a question, be sure to pop it into the chat, even if I can't see it now. And if for whatever reason we don't get to it today, I'll pop it in an email and I'll get it back to you. So any questions you have, I belong to you now, so bother me. So your brain, your life. So let's tuck in. Now, you guys are all brain fans, so let's tuck into the brain. Now, what I want to do with you is I want to take a kind of journey through the history of how we thought about the brain, so we can build up a picture to kind of how we understand the brain today. So our question today is, what is the brain's operating system? How does she work to make sense of all of this? Now, back in the day, we used to think the brain was just an all-purpose meat computer, right? We just called it an organ that thought. You had stomach digests, you got lungs that breathe, you got a brain that thinks. What more do we got to know? Then this guy comes along. Now, you've probably met him before, Mr. Phineas Gage. But for those of you who don't know, so Phineas used to work for the railroad, and he had the unfortunately named job. He was a blower for the railroad. Now, bear with me, this will make sense in a second. So anytime you're laying down railroad tracks and you get to a hill, you kind of got three choices, right? You go around the hill, you tunnel through the hill, or you blow the hill up. He's a blower, so guess what he does? He just blows things up. That's his entire job. Now, the explosive Phineas uses is black powder. So you've all probably played with a sparkler before, like on the 4th of July or New Year's, those little sticks, you light it and it fizzes. Turns out that's black powder. When black powder is loose, it doesn't explode. It just kind of goes. So in order to make it explosive, what do you have to do to it? You have to compact it. You have to get that stuff tight. Once black powder is tight, that's when it goes bang. So Phineas one day he's got to blow up this hill. He digs this hole, fills it with black powder. And he's like, hey, engineers, I've got to tamp this down. Do you guys have a tool maybe I could borrow? They're like, yeah, we sure do, big guy. Got a giant metal rod with a pointed end on it. Cool, thanks. So he puts this on his black powder, starts hitting it to tamp it down. Now, question, what do you think might happen every once in a while when you hit a metal pole with a metal hammer? So he comes down, he kicks off a spark. The spark ignites this black powder and it shoots this pole up. So the pole comes up, it catches him right here above his left jaw, goes in, takes his left eye out from the inside. So catches the optic nerve and rips the eye in. Totally liquefies the front part of his brain. All of this is gone. This thing shoots out of the top of his head. It lands 30 meters behind him. That's how much force it came up with. And what do you think happened to Mr. Phineas Gage? Not only did this guy survive, but he picked up his hammer and he went right back to work. Didn't even lose consciousness. Now, in hindsight, he's almost certainly in shock, right? Like you don't blow off half your head and go, well, still on the clock, everyone, let's get back to work. So he's not thinking straight. But here we got a guy who just lost half of his brain. He goes back to work. We're right. The brain is just an all-purpose meat computer. Look at him. You can tear it out, throw it around, put some over here. It doesn't really matter. But then weird things start happening. So before this accident, Phineas, just a nice dude. He's got a wife, he's got kids, normal guy. After the accident, real quick, he decides, I really don't like work anymore. So he kind of quits going. And fair enough, I wouldn't want to go back either. Then he decides, I really don't like my wife and kids anymore. So he kind of kicks them out. Then he decides, I really don't like people all that much anymore. So he kind of moves into the middle of nowhere and becomes this curmudgeonly blah of a guy. Like he's still alive, but he just doesn't care, doesn't do much, just doesn't really, nothing matters anymore. And from him, like all of his friends said, look, the Phineas Gage before that accident was totally different than the Phineas Gage after. Something essential changed. So from him, we learned, okay, you don't have a brain. You've got dozens and dozens and dozens of mini brains all scattered throughout here, all doing their own job. So one term you might hear for this is called modularity. We don't talk about the brain as unified. We talk about it as independent modules. More realistically, it's probably networks. Like it's not specific parts of your brains. It's probably diffuse networks, each doing their own job. But here, take it back. In his case, he loses all the brains that like give him drive, motivation, want to hang out with wife and kids, want to go to work. All these are gone. Still got things back here, walk, talk, breathe, complain, throw the sticks at kids, whatever the heck he wants to do. Still got these brains. So cool. You don't have a brain. You've got dozens and dozens of mini brains all chugging away doing their own job. Our next question was, how then does all of this come together to make one this? If I've got dozens of independent brains all fighting away, how do I have one coherent experience of the world? And our first theory was here. Now, I'm going to play you a video, but what I've done is I've taken the image away from this video. So all you're going to do is hear the audio. I want you to give a listen and tell me, what is this woman saying here?
Okay, here we go. Baba. Baba.
What do we got?
Baba.
We got a woman saying Baba. Awesome. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to play you that same video. Nothing about the audio is going to change, except this time we're going to show you the woman's face. And I want you to tell me, what is this woman saying?
Okay, here we go. Baba. Baba.
What is it?
Baba.
Dada?
Baba.
Dada? So
Baba.
close your eyes.
Baba.
With your eyes closed,
Baba.
what is she saying?
Baba.
Baba. It's just a
Baba.
woman saying Baba. Open your eyes.
Baba.
Huh.
Baba. Baba.
So
Baba.
what in the heck is going on? So you probably figured it out. We know there's only ever one sound coming into your ears. What is that? Baba. Why then do we all of a sudden hear something different when we see her face? It's because her mouth is saying something else. Let's go back here. I'll play it again, but I'll try and take the sound off. Let me see.
Okay.
There we go. Now
Here
just
we
tell me,
go.
what is her mouth saying? Gaga. So we got Baba coming into our ears. We got Gaga coming into our eyes. Put these two signals together, and all of a sudden we hear
Baba.
Dada?
Baba.
Dada?
Baba. Baba.
Okay. So here's our theory. So the world comes into your body through your senses. You get sight, you get smell, taste, touch, sound. All these things rush up and they trigger off all these baby brains. You get sight bit, word bit, face bit, line bit. The next thing that happens is your brain must just average it all up. It must just squish it all together and we live right in the middle. So in this case, you get Baba here, you get Gaga here, put them together and right in the middle is the. And that's the way the brain works. It's just a giant averaging machine. And honestly, that was our theory for a little bit till thank goodness somebody stood up and said, wait a second, that doesn't make a whole heap of sense. Otherwise, why would this work? Now, anytime we talk about the brain, you're going to have to play this game at least once. So let's get it over with. All right, on the next slide, I'm going to pop up a bunch of squares. Each square is going to be a different color. All you got to do wherever you're at, tell me what these colors are as quickly as you can. Here we go. Sweet. I'm guessing you did great. You know your colors, rock and roll. Round 2, I'm going to pop a bunch of words up on your screen. All you got to do is read these words out loud as quickly as you can. Here we go. Wonderful. So I'm guessing you did great. You know your colors, you know your words, and you all know where we're going. Let's get it over with. All right. On the next slide, I'm going to pop up a bunch of words, but each word is going to be written in a different colored font. Your job out loud, wherever you're at, say what color each word is written in. So I don't care about the word, don't want to hear that word. I want to know what color the letters of each word are. Here we go as fast as you can. Let's see what happens. Are you feeling it? Are you getting that crunch, that push, that pull? So wait a second, why was that so difficult? So let's go back. So you don't have a brain, you've got dozens of independent brains. You see something like this, the word red written in the color green. You've got one bit of your brain that likes what? Words. Does it care what else is going on in the world? Heck no. I am word bit, there's a word, I'm gonna do my job. You got another bit of your brain that likes what? Colors. Does it care what else is happening? Heck no, I am color bit. There's a color, that's my job, I'm gonna do it. You got word bit, you got color bit. We can feel these two different brains going off. Now, according to our last theory, we should have just averaged this together, right? You should have had red over here, green over here. We should have seen this and we all should have said, I don't know, green or gred, whatever's right in the middle. But we didn't. We didn't average anything out. At the end, we were able to select one of our brains. We were able to go red, nope, green. So cool. This means you must have a controller. Sitting somewhere in your brain must be a module, a node, a network, a mechanism that can organize and coordinate all the other baby brains up here. Now, if you had to pick a spot in your brain where you think your controller sits, where do you think this guy might live? Excuse me. Now, if you're anything like us, our first thought was it's going to be deep in the middle, right? Like if it's in the middle of the brain, it has easy access to everything, great place for a controller. But it turns out the middle of our brain is the oldest part of our brain. This dude, the controller, is the newest bit of our brain. So what's the newest part of our brain? The bit of the brain that only humans really have in spades? The prefrontal cortex. Guess where your controller's sitting? Boop. And here's how we thought it worked. So the world comes into your body through your senses. They rush up all these signals and they trigger off these baby brains. So you get word bit, you get color bit, you get line bit, dog bit, smell bit. The next thing that happens is our prefrontal cortex, our controller, can organize all these other brains by and large by sending out a single signal. Very rarely does it turn things on. We didn't think it was really activating things. By and large, we thought it was simply doing this. It was shutting things down. It's a massive inhibitor. And here's how the world works. World comes in through your senses, turns on your brain. Controller can go, okay, what are we dealing with today? Nope, don't want that. Nope, that ain't good. Shuts down whatever it doesn't want running. And congratulations, whatever's left, that's your experience of reality. And for a long time, this is how we spoke. We thought we'd pretty much nailed the brain. World turns it on, controller shuts it down. The rest is just details. Everyone go about your business, put away your lab coats, we're done here. And then this happened. 12 black lines and one green square changed everything we thought we knew about the brain and how it's working. Now, for some of you, it's working already, but for some of you who are wondering, why the heck are we looking at this cube? What I want you to do is I want you to imagine that green face of the cube. Imagine it's like a piece of glass so you can see through it. And I want you to bring that green to the front of the cube. So your cube is starting on this green face here, going away from you, down, and to the left. Now, if you got the green in the front, I want you to push it to the back. Make the green the back of the cube. So now your cube starts on this face over here, goes away from you, up and to the right. And if you got the green in the back, pull it to the front again. And if it's sitting in the front, push it to the back. Now, question, am I changing this image in any way, shape, or form? Like, am I flipping between two different cubes? Of course not. Nothing about the world is changing, yet somehow we are changing it. The wavelengths, the signals coming off of your screen, entering your eye, activating your brain are identical right now as they were 10 seconds ago. Nothing about the signal changed, yet somehow we can see two different things. What's going on here? Now think about it. According to our last theory, if all we have is a controller, the best we can do is shut things down. This should come in, turn on the brain, and the best we do is see it, not see it. It's on or it's off. But here, not only do we see it, we can move it. We can morph it. We can tweak it. How are we doing this? Now, just because this is so important, let's do another one. So on the next slide, I want you to imagine it's olden times. We're in old Florence and we're going to go to a masquerade ball. So I don't know if you guys know those old parties like in the 1600s where people used to have to wear masks. Cool. We're going to a masquerade ball. Here is the mask I have purchased for our party. Now, I'm guessing most of you are seeing my mask. Awesome. Now, what I want you to do is I want you to imagine that while I'm at this party, I meet a lovely young lady, sparks fly, the night ends in magic. Now, thinking about me and this woman, I want you to focus only on the black and white portion in the middle of the mask and see if anything else pops out at you. So have a look and see what you see. For some of you, it's starting to pop out. Now, for the rest of you, what are we looking at here? We got two people kissing. What? Look closely, see if you can pull out the two people kissing. Oh. And if you're struggling here, I'll highlight them for you. So it's two people in profiles. Like here's the dude coming in from the side. Here's the girl coming up for the kiss behind. Okay. So if you see the kissers, pull your attention back now and see the mask. And if you're looking at the mask, zoom back in and see the kissers. Am I changing this image at all in any way? Nothing about the world is changing. The wavelengths coming off your screen, entering your eyes, activating your brain are identical right now as they were 10 seconds ago. Yet you can see two different things. How are we doing this? Now you guys get a bonus one. So one of my students a couple years ago showed me this one and I thought it was too good. I've been showing it ever since. So here's your bonus one. Here's an image of a bunch of rectangles, right? Wrong. What if I told you this picture was actually composed of 16 different circles? Look closely, see if you can pull out the circles. And if you're struggling, here, I'll highlight them for you. So keep your eye on the screen. Okay. Now, if you're looking at the circles, go back and see the squares. And if you're looking at the squares, go back and see the circles. Nothing about the world is changing, yet somehow we are perceiving it in multiple ways. How is this happening? Last one, just because I love these so much. Now, y'all know, everyone out here watching knows that that square in the middle on the top is exactly the same color as that square in the middle on the left. You all know those two squares are exactly the same color, but I guarantee you none of you see that. Right now, the one on the top looks like a nice, deep, dark brown. The one on the left, I'm guessing, looks kind of like a gross, orangey, rust-looking thing. Cool. Now, all I'm going to do is fade out this image except for those two squares. I promise you, I haven't doctored this. If you don't believe me, you can cover it up using your hands right now. Have a good time. All I'm going to do is fade it out. See if you can feel the moment when you decide, oh, that square can't be orange. It must be brown. Now, all I'm going to do is bring that square back in. I promise you, nothing about this little brown square on the left is going to change. You can use any scientific tool you want to measure it, quantify it, bring me your physics, give me the wavelength. It's going to stay exactly the same. But see if you can feel the moment when you decide, no, it can't be brown. It must be orange. Okay. Now let's pull our attention back. Why? What is it about this image that makes us think that square can't be brown? What's going on? Now y'all got it. It has to do with light and shadow, right? Everything in this side of the picture is in light. Everything over here is in shadow. Now we all have tons of experience with lights and shadows. We have, I don't know how old you are, probably 20, 30, let's say 2 decades experiencing the world like this. When something moves from light to shadow, the colors change. That's simply how this world works. And here the world does exactly what you think it should. Green changes color, red changes color, white changes color, blue changes color. Everything's changing color except for this. You know what it should be doing. It's not doing it. So guess who simply changes the color for it? Welcome to the New World Order. Turns out you don't have a controller. You do have a controller in the front of your brain, but you have a lot more than just a controller. Turns out you've also got a programmer, a coder, diffused throughout your brain as a network that can send signals back to every other cell within your brain, tweak how those cells function at the individual level so you experience the world in the way you think it should be, not in the way it actually is. And if that sentence didn't make you feel slightly uncomfortable, then you didn't understand what I just said. So let's do it again. Diffused throughout your brain is a network that can send signals back to every other cell within your brain, and we're now starting to learn outside your brain. Tweak how those cells function at the molecular level, so you literally see, hear, smell, feel, taste the world as you think it should be, not as it actually is. Think about it like this. Go back to Baba Gaga Girl. For the longest time, and I apologize, I just don't know her name. For the longest time, we used to think Baba gets in your ears, Gaga gets in your eyes, and somewhere down the track, you simply interpret it as Dada. We now know that's not true. When your eyes are closed and you hear Baba, the very first cells in your ear start vibrating at a frequency that sends Baba in. It's Baba from the moment you hear anything. But as soon as you open your eyes, see her mouth and go, oh, it can't be Baba, your coder sends signals back in these very first cells. We're not even in the brain yet. Shift their position, vibrate differently, and it's the from the moment you hear anything. Baba doesn't get anywhere near your brain. It's not a down the track interpretation issue. It's an in the moment perception issue. Now, this leads to a very important question. If you've got a network changing how all of this works to drive our perceptions, question, what's driving that network? If you've got a coder changing all of this, what codes the coder? In neuroscience, we tend to say the thing driving your coder is, let's go back here, is your schema. In psychology, we tend to say the thing driving your coder is your concepts, your conceptual maps. But the easiest way to understand it is here. It's your stories. The stories you use to make sense of the world, how the world works, how all the different pieces of the world fit together, who you are, how you fit with those pieces. Those stories drive your coder changes all of this, and that's exactly what we get. In a very real sense, our stories are driving our perceptions, not the other way around. Now, this is all well and good and fun when we're playing little games on the screen, right? Like it's brown, it's orange, yay, this is woo. How deep does this go? Like, how real is this? To understand, I want to tell you a quick story. Now, our story begins here with Mr. William Gladstone. Now, Gladstone, some of you may know him. He was a British politician in the late 1800s, so big politico. But his true passion was Homer, the Odyssey and the Iliad. Now, most of you will know these books, but for those of you who don't, these are the two oldest pieces of Greek writing that we have. So any Greek myth you know, from the Trojan War to the Trojan horse to the Cyclops to Medusa, all those myths come out of these two books, the Odyssey and the Iliad, two oldest pieces of Greek writing we have, written by a dude named Homer. Gladstone loved these books. He thought the secrets to life and how to live it were hidden in these books. All we got to do is find it. So he spent his whole life just going through these books, pulling out secret meanings, messages. He treated these like people treat the Bible. He studied these things to find answers. So our story takes place in Gladstone's about his mid-30s. He's reading through the Iliad, and the Iliad is all about the Trojan War. And at this point in the story, Homer writes that Achilles was one of the soldiers. He'd had enough of this war, and Achilles was done. He was going to quit, and Homer says he was going to hop into his boat and sail home across the wine dark sea. So 4 words. This whole story starts with 4 words. The wine dark sea. Now Gladstone reads this and he thinks to himself, man, that's a weird choice. Like, look, I've grown up next to the ocean my whole life, and I've seen it a ton of colors. I've seen it dark. I've seen it black. I've seen it gray. I ain't never seen it the same color I describe a glass of wine. That's just a very odd choice. So Gladstone starts poking around, and he notices Homer uses colors in a very strange way. So for instance, anytime Homer talks about iron, so like iron tools or iron armor, he refers to them as being purple. Whenever Homer talks about honey, he says it's green. Whenever he talks about sheep, he says they're violet. So cool, sheep are violet to Homer. So Gladstone's like, man, something weird is going on here. So what Gladstone does is he trawls through the Odyssey and the Iliad, and he just starts counting up color words. How many times does Homer use each different color? Let's just get a baseline. And he finds the most used color, hands down, is black. This appears about 170 times. Next is white. This appears about 100 times. Way down here is red. This appears 13 times. Green and yellow each appear less than 10 times. And one major color doesn't appear anywhere in either the Odyssey or the Iliad. What color was missing? Blue. It was nowhere. So Gladstone's like, man, this is weird. So the next thing he does is he goes to all of Homer's contemporaries. So every single ancient Greek author he can find, trawls through their work, counts up color words, and he finds the exact same pattern. Whole lot of black, whole lot of white, little bit of red, some green, some yellow. One major color doesn't appear anywhere in any piece of ancient Greek writing. What was missing? Blue. It was just nowhere. So Gladstone has a think, and he says, I think I figured it out. I think I know what's going on. Homer must have been colorblind. And by extension, every single ancient Greek author must also have been colorblind. That was his big theory, that if you want to be an author in ancient Greece, you had to prove you were colorblind. That's a prereq. So how do you think this theory goes down? As you can probably guess, he kind of gets made fun of, kind of gets laughed at, and that's it. He drops it. Kind of gets made fun of. Everyone's like, go back to politics, dude. Never talks about it again, drops it. 20 years later, this guy comes along, Lazarus Geiger. He hears about this and he says, I actually think there's something to this. I want to keep digging. So what Geiger does is he goes through every major ancient civilization he can find around the world. So Egypt, Iceland, China, Japan, Vedic hymns, Hebrew texts, you name it. Goes through all of these cultures, goes as far back as he can in their writing and their language, just starts counting up the appearance of color words, and he finds the exact same pattern in every ancient civilization around the world. The first color to appear in every culture's writing is always black and white. The first true color to appear is always red. Green and yellow alternate. And the last color to appear in every civilization's writing, except for one, is always what? Blue. It was simply nowhere in the ancient world. Now, one culture did use blue before the rest. One culture's language went black, white, red, green, blue, yellow. So they had blue before anyone else was using blue. Any ideas on who might have used it first? Turns out it was the Egyptians. Now, why? Think about it. What did the Egyptians have access to that no other culture in the world had access to? Lapis lazuli. If you played Minecraft, there you go. Now you're thinking, oh, that thing is actually real. Yes, it is. If you think about it, blue is ridiculously rare in nature. Like there are no blue buffaloes roaming the plains. There aren't that many blue flowers. Most of our blue flowers today are genetically engineered to be blue. They're not natural. In fact, to this day, the only natural source of aquamarine blue pigment we have in the world is right here, lapis lazuli. It's a stone mined in Afghanistan, brought down to Egypt. The Egyptians could crumble it up. They turned it into a pigment. They made makeup out of it. They made paint out of it. Geiger's like, I solved it, guys. It's easy. Until your culture can produce a color, can actually make a pigment, that color's just not important to you, so you don't write about it. Here, the Egyptians could make the pigment. They wrote about it. They traded the pigment. Everyone had it. Everyone wrote about it. Boom. Problem solved. This is easy. Mic drop. I'm out. See you later. And everyone said, dang, Geiger, that's a really good theory. And Geiger's like, I know that is a really good theory. Thank you. Too bad I don't believe it. Geiger's like, I actually think it's the other way around. What if instead of until I can produce a color, I just don't talk about it? It's until I know a color should exist, there is nothing there for me to talk about. So instead of until I can make it, it's until I have a concept for that thing, there is no thing there for me to really discuss. Now, how do you think this theory goes down? As you can guess, a lot of people vilified him for this. They're like, dude, what? That's nonsense. That's mumbo jumbo. You can't say that. And the biggest argument everyone levied against him was, that's unprovable. That's an unprovable theory. That's not scientific. Go home. That's silly. And that's a good point. How could we prove this? We can't go back in time and ask people, hey, do you see this color? It's an unprovable theory. So what can we do with it? Well, cut to today. There was a tribe in Namibia called the Himba. We know their language. Guess what they don't have a word for? Blue. So now we can test this. I'm going to play a quick game with you. I'm going to pop a bunch of colored squares up on your screen. One square is going to be a different color than the rest. All you got to do wherever you're at, point to the square which is different than the others. Here we go. Now, I'm guessing that wasn't too tricky, but watch the Himba try to do this. Guy's face. Is it that he's not trying hard enough? No, he doesn't see it. Now, if you want to experience what this feels like, the Himba have about 37 unique words for different shades of green. So green is their color. It means everything from food to trails. That's their color. In English, we have about 17 words we use for green. Same game. I'm going to pop a bunch of colored squares up on your screen. One is going to be different than the rest. Point to the one which is different this time. Uh-oh. Now, I promise you one of those squares is different. And when I say one is different, I don't mean one is kind of different. I mean one of those squares is very different than the others. First time I saw it, I didn't believe it. I had to cover things up, ask people, put it into Photoshop, do all the work. One of those is different. Turns out it is this one. Now, if you see it, how is it different? Turns out it's got a ton more yellow in it. Like not a little bit more yellow. Like when you click on all these squares in Photoshop, it's just green. As soon as you click on this one, the whole spectrum goes whoomp over into yellow. How many of you now know this and you still can't see it? Well, watch the Himba do this one.
Different.
So I flipped mine so you could play twice. But here we go. Our stories drive our coder drives our perception. Now, wait a second. There's one big glaring issue with this whole story. So that researcher, that white guy in that video, he was one of the team. About 14 years ago, they're coming out with this data with the Himba. And they're saying, guys, it looks like Geiger is right. And collectively, we're all losing our mind going, wait, what does this mean? But no, hold on. This doesn't make any sense. Has anything jumped out to anyone as being kind of important and very blue, yet not yet discussed in this entire story? What about the sky? Look, you don't need blue buffaloes roaming the plain. Y'all don't need blue flowers. We're all under the bluest thing all day, every day. What about the sky? Well, I got some bad news for you. If this theory is accurate, then guess what? Turns out the sky ain't blue. The sky is only blue because we have the concepts that allow it to be blue. Now, how the heck would you ever prove something like that? Well, luckily, that researcher, that white guy in that video, he was about to have a kid. And like any good researcher does, when you have a kid, you run an experiment. So he has a baby girl and he decides, okay, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to make sure I'm going to make sure she knows the color blue. She'll be able to point to this microphone and say that's blue. No problem. The one thing I'll make sure she never hears is that the sky should be blue. So she'll know the color. She just won't know that it exists up there. So the whole time she's growing up, they had to control like every book that was in the house. If it had a blue sky, she wasn't allowed to see it. Anyone she ever talked to never heard this. Whatever TV show she watched, she's never heard that the sky is blue. So she's grown up, and if you ever get to hear him tell the story, it's so good. He says she's a little older than 2.5. We're in the park. It's a perfectly blue sky day. Time to spring my trap. Let's do this. So he starts playing the color game with her. He's like, hey, baby, what color is that over there? She's like, red. Yay. And what color is that over there? Green. Yay, he said. And then I did it. I said, what color is that? And I pointed up. And he said, this laughing, bubbly, talkative girl just shuts up. And he's like, come on, baby, what color is that? And he said, she looked up at me scared, like I was pointing at nothingness. So he's like, all right, no problem. Let it go. Drops it. Over the next 6 months, anytime it's a blue sky day, he plays the color game with her and he says, what color is that? 6 months, she doesn't say a word, just silence, crickets. Finally, he says she's a little older than 3. He's doing his thing. He says, what color is that? She finally said her first word. What color do you think she said the sky was? Turns out she said it was white. If you ask Homer and all the ancient Greek authors, guess what color the sky always is? It's white. If you ask the Himba, now the Himba were cool because we actually got to talk to them. To the Himba, the sky is largely white, gray, or black. It's white during the day, black at night, gray largely around sunrise, sunset. Every once in a while, they'll see reds and oranges when the sun's at its kind of most horizon. But for the most part, they just never put colors in the sky. It was never a concept for them. So for the next 6 months, anytime he says, hey, baby, what color is that? She always says white. Then he said after she turned 3.5, every once in a while, she would pepper in the word blue. And then after she turned 4, it was pretty consistently blue after that. But by then, she'd already started preschool and they'd stopped controlling everything she saw. But here we go. Earlier, I asked you, how deep does this concept go? Something we take for granted so much as the sky is blue is only true because we have the concepts that allow it to be true. Our stories drive our coder drives our perception. Now I'm keeping an eye on the time here, but didn't know it was going to get this deep. I'm going to have to skip through some stuff. I think I've kind of over-prepared, but that's okay. What I want to do is I want to show you this, is the term we use. So your brain, by and large, we've got this coder network that can feed back and change how the brain works, or it can take in information and kind of actively engage with the world. So the term we technically use for this that you want to be looking up is called bottom-up versus top-down processing. Top-down processing says the world comes in and it doesn't matter. Your coder pushes back and says, I know how this should be. That square can't be brown. That color can't be blue. That word can't be Dada. It pushes back and it drives your perception according to your perceptions. Bottom-up processing is when the world comes in, you don't have a story, and essentially your coder network goes live and just starts to rewrite. The world gets in and starts to change how all of this works. So just as a simple example, a lot of you probably, I don't know your ages, have probably crossed a shop. But if you remember, if you're old enough, remember learning how to drive and how absolutely miserable that was. Like, you're not an idiot, but all of a sudden you get behind the wheel and your arms aren't going in the right direction. Your legs aren't moving. I'm teaching my nephew how to drive now. He did that thing the other day where we're on the highway. And I'm like, all right, let's change lanes. So he looks over his shoulder and just everything went with him. And now we're 3 lanes over before we all know it. It's what mode is your brain in here? This is bottom up. This is when you don't have a story and your top-down processor, your coder doesn't know what the heck to do. So it's rewriting stories. It's changing stories. It's saying we need to update our understanding of the world. How many of you have driven more recently and looked a little bit more like this? Doesn't matter how complex a skill is. Once you've got a story for it and you can lock that story down, you can run that on top down and boom, essentially your brain goes into autopilot. It's like, I've seen this, I've got this, don't even worry about it. So bottom up versus top down processing is kind of one aspect of this that you want to look at. Other terms you'll hear to describe this, if you want to look this up in the literature, psychologically, they say system 1 versus system 2 thinking, but I'm not a huge fan of that. You could say active learning versus passive prediction. And this is where you start to see that the brain, by and large, is just a prediction machine. It runs stories like, here, you want to get scared. Turns out you're not even listening to me right now. Right now, everyone listening to this is about 1 to 2 seconds in front of me, using their stories to simply predict what's about to come out of my mouth. And so long as what I predict is even remotely close to what you think it should be, you experience your prediction and not reality. This is how deep it goes. And it's all an energy saving mechanism. Your brain takes a lot of energy to bring in new information and rewrite stories. It takes a lot less energy just to run old stories. So that's why 90% of your day, you're just living in this kind of prediction. Your stories about how the world should be, and that's exactly what we get. Now, I'm going to skip all this. Sorry. I had a couple of games I wanted to play with you, but I just don't have time. Here's where I want to end it with you guys. Can you change your stories, or are you stuck with the stories you've got? Hoping you're starting to recognize, of course, you can change your stories. But in order to do so, what you have to do, you have to get into that bottom up. You have to shut your stories down and let your coder start to rewrite, change things. 2 ways we know to do that. Well, to be fair, there are hundreds of ways to do this. Read a book, exercise, diet, talk to somebody. You're constantly going in, flipping between these 2 different thinking modes. 2 very important for us to think about. One is here. Go brand new. Learning. Anytime you engage with learning, if you want new information to make it in, it has to make it through that system. So this is why if you ever take a course with me at uni, no one is ever allowed to have computers in front of them. No one's ever allowed to take notes. No one's ever allowed to have books. You want to learn? You hang out with me. We talk. We engage. We ask questions. We interact. You engage with learning. Watch when you feel you kick into that mode and your stories start to change. Next way to access your coder, I got to skip it. Sorry, y'all, is here, is error, screw up. If you have a prediction or a story for the world and that story fails, you don't have a choice. You automatically go into active coding mode. Why? It's a safety mechanism. If you think the world should be this and it's very different, your brain goes, uh-oh, you're going to die. Update, update, update now. I promise you, you will never change a story or learn better, faster, easier than right after you screw up, because biologically the whole system says update, update, update now. Now, unfortunately, when you screw up and your whole system kicks into update mode, you don't learn automatically. My God, I wish you did. It would be so much easier. At this moment, we now enter into a choice. So our brain kicks the coder on and says, time to update. Now you can choose what to do with it. You can choose to engage with that, in which case your brain flips into a mode called theta. That is you updating. If you've ever talked about plasticity, theta is a sign of plasticity. That's you changing your perceptions of the world. But if I can engage with my errors, guess what my other option is? Disengage, shut it down, avoid. It goes off and you go, oh, no, I don't want this. Cool. Your brain will flip into a mode called beta. That's essentially a status quo signal, and it will work to erase that error. And about 72 hours later, you'll probably make the same error again, because for all intents and purposes, it gets shoved out of your brain. So when you screw up, you don't get a choice. Your whole mode goes on, but now you get to choose what to do with it. Do you engage with it or do you shut it down? What do you think most people choose, to engage or to avoid? The vast majority choose to avoid. Why? Because it is so much easier. But I want you to recognize this is the secret to everything. You don't got to love the feeling of your coder being live. I'm 40 years old. I still hate it. It is uncomfortable when your brain kicks into that learning mode. Trick is, you don't got to love it. You just got to recognize it for what it is and then stick with it. Don't take it personally. This isn't me failing. This isn't me struggling. This is literally just part of the learning system. And man, this is going to suck for the next couple of weeks, but you stick with it. You chug, you come out experiencing a different world than when you went in. Now, I'm going to end with one last story to show you how deep this goes. Our story begins with this man here, Mr. Lewis Turman. Now, you all know about IQs and intelligence testing and stuff. I could talk for hours about this. IQ is one of the most meaningless things human beings have ever created. The IQ test, especially, it's just trash. But we'll save that for another time. Lewis Turman loved IQ. He thought IQ was everything. He thought, if I know your IQ, I know everything I need to know about you. So convinced was he, and this was back in the 1930s, that he went down the coast of Southern California, IQ tested 40,000 children below the age of 12, and he picked out his top 1,500, those with the highest IQ. And he said, all right, everyone watch. These 1,500 kids with high IQs, they're going to change the world. They're going to be the game changers. They're going to be the wealth makers, the politicians, the CEOs. These other 39,000 kids, yeah, they're cute, but they ain't going to do much. Watch these kids. They're going to be the movers. And so he did. For the next 40 years, he followed these 1,500 kids. Now, question, out of these 1,500 students, how many do you reasonably think could be called game changers or even remotely important in their field? Turns out it's less than 5. Turns out it's less than 3. Turns out it is less than 1. The answer? A big whopping goose egg. By all means, they were normal people. Some people got jobs, some didn't. Some got married, some went to uni, some went to prison, some became professors. It was just like a normal group of 1,500 kids, but no one did anything of note. One of them we thought did for a while. So a lot of their names haven't been released yet, but one of them was the guy who came up with like the Mediterranean diet or some such like, and we're like, finally, we got a winner here. Until we found out that he made up all of his data and wasn't really actually doing research. He was just lying. And oh, there that guy went. But there we go. So what went wrong? Now, there's 2 things that went wrong with this study. One, IQ doesn't really talk about anything. IQ, when it comes to actual action in the world, really doesn't correlate much with anything at all. So take that off the table, though. What else happened? Give me 1,500 kids randomly, and at least one, statistically speaking, should have done something of note. How is it possible none of them did? Well, we think we figured out what happened, and it's here. Right at the very beginning of this study, Turman made a big old mistake. What did he do? He told everyone. He told these 1,500 kids, you guys are going to be geniuses. You're going to change the world. And he followed them for 40 years, continuously telling them this. And he told the other 39,000 kids, I'm sorry, you're not going to have a big life. You're just not smart enough. Enjoy nothingness. Now, what impact would that have? Now we can figure it out. Give me one of Turman's termites. Oh, so, by the way, he started to call them his termites. I don't know why. Maybe he was angry. Give me a Turman's termite. I pop them into a scanner and they make a mistake. Their brain will invariably go into this mode here. What do you think this is? Engage or avoid? Pure avoid. Why? Because if you're a genius and you make a mistake, there's only 2 options. Either 1, you're wrong, which can't be true because I'm a genius, so shut it down. Or 2, the world is wrong, which is probably right. I'm right. The world is wrong, in which case, shut it down. I'll be fine. By telling these kids, y'all are geniuses, you're fine, they essentially plateaued. They stopped engaging with errors. They stopped changing their stories, and they were running the same stories at 80 as they were at 18. They just essentially hogtied themselves. Now, give me a real game changer. So here's one, Isaac Stern. So he died probably before a lot of you were born. But when I was growing up, he was one of the best living musicians, and he changed the way we teach and think about the violin. Huge game changer. He was IQ tested by Turman when he was a young kid, deemed too stupid. He goes on to change the world. How'd you do it, big guy? Well, it's only through failure and through experiment that we learn and that we grow. William Shockley, IQ tested as a kid by Turman, deemed too stupid. This guy goes on to win the Nobel Prize in Physics for inventing the transistor, the thing that makes all the electronics work. The only reason we're having this conversation now is because this guy existed. Massive game changer. I thought he was too stupid. How'd you do it? Well, transistor was created by making errors and following hunches that failed to give what was expected. You give me an actual game changer. I pop them in a scanner, have them make a mistake. Their brain will invariably go into this mode here. What do you think that is? There you go. The big difference we've seen between the highest echelon and everyone else, believe it or not, it's not intelligence. It's not SES. It's not what school you went to. It's not who you trained with. It's when you make a mistake, do you stick with it or do you shut it down? There's no right or wrong here, but the story is if your perception of the world is your current story, every time you shut down an error, you just maintain your old story. Nothing changes. Whereas people who engage with error, they're just constantly evolving. They're just constantly moving in a different direction. Doesn't mean that everyone who engages with errors is going to be a game changer, but that's a common characteristic when we very rarely can find common characteristics amongst this upper echelon. So when I said engaging with errors, getting into that mode, that's how we change our stories is so important. This is what I mean. That seems to be one of the driving things of change. So thank you all so much for hanging out with me. We had a lot. I'm happy to chat with you guys now. I just want to leave you here with a quick shameless plug. I have a YouTube channel. So if you just look up Jared Cooney Horvath on YouTube, if any of this stuff interests you, every 2 weeks, I put out a new video that looks at research that has to do primarily with learning. So my whole interest is in learning and teaching. So if you're just interested in more stuff, you think this is interesting and you want to dive deeper into some of these topics, just know there's a resource you can tap into there. Otherwise, as I said, I might lose some of you, but if you want to shoot me an email, my name's my thing at Gmail, or you can see me on Twitter. I'm not often there, but if you just use my name, Jared Cooney Horvath at Twitter, or excuse me, at gmail.com, you can send me questions whenever you need to. Otherwise, that is all I have got for you guys today. I'm happy to hand it over and address any questions that anyone might have. Oh, I don't know. Let me look in the chat here. Hi, everyone. Welcome. Oh, nope. That's the welcome message. This felt like a combo of TED Ed and Vsauce. I don't know what either of those are, but I like them. Could you elaborate on the learning mode state? What does that feel like for you? Yes. I can kick you into it right now so you can feel what it feels like. Give me a second. We're going to do it. But it is very important. Most people hate it. It's not a comfortable feeling by any means. Here, let me do this. So I think I'm still sharing my sound. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to play a sound effect. See if you can, let me make sure. I think you can hear this. So here we go. See if you can hear this. So I'm guessing you got that. We got a doorbell. What's this sound effect here? That's a very cheap cow. Yes, it is. So this is what typical just prediction mode top down feels like. It's a doorbell. It's a cow. We've heard these a million times. Everything's fine. Tell me, what is this sound here? Is it a robot? Is it like a dolphin? Is it like a squeegee? Now stop. Tune into your body. What are you feeling right now? Some of you will say you feel confused. Some people say they're uncertain. Some people say they feel uncomfortable. Some say they feel curious, like they just need to know an answer. I get a crunch, physically tune in. I get a crunch between my eyebrows. My wife says she starts to feel a heaviness in her chest. Congratulations, whatever you're feeling right now, that is the sensation of learning mode. What just happened is we're kicking it in kind of our story. We got a doorbell, we got a cow. Yeah, this is great. Something comes in that we don't understand. We don't have a story for it. The brain is furiously saying, wait a second, do we know this? Do we not know this? Do we need to build something new? What's going on? That is the sensation of that learning mode. That's what it feels like when your brain kicks in and says, we got to change. Now watch this. I'm going to give you a prediction. So here's that sound again. Here's your prediction.
She ironed her skirt.
And back. Oh. So once you have a prediction, now you can coast back into your story and everything makes sense again. Now, some of you get how this game works and some of you still don't get it. So that means when I play this here, some of you can hear it just fine, but some of you are kicking back into that learning mode. If you are, tune in, feel it. That is the sensation of growth, of change, of evolution. Most people hate it. You don't gotta love it. I still don't love it. I don't know why anyone would. Point is, we don't gotta like it. We've got to start to recognize it. So when it kicks off, we don't take it personally. We don't shut it down. We go, uh-oh, I know what's going on here. This is gonna suck, but let's go. What do I gotta change? Now watch this. I'll give you your prediction. So here's that sound again. Prediction.
The floor was quite slippery.
Back. And everything makes sense again. Now, did that, I hope that worked. Like, I don't know how timing came through, but did that kind of come through? Were some of you able to get that kind of jolt? Like, the heck is this? And you could feel like you can see it. If you ever do this in a classroom, you can see tingling in my hands. That's it. There it is. You can see a lot of kids' backs will go straighter. Their eyes will get wider. What's happening in that learning state is quite literally, your attention becomes highly focused. You leave your prediction, you zip into the present moment, your pupils dilate, your breathing slows down, your heart rate slows down. You can viscerally feel when you enter that mode. And it's slightly different for everyone, but you can see it. Typically, when a kid goes into it, they'll lean forward. And I'm like, I just kicked off your coder. What's going on? That's it. That is what it feels like to be in that learning mode. And when you're in that learning mode, what's happening is your brain is kicking into a state that is essentially trying to drive plasticity. There are certain patterns in your brain that lead to change much faster than other patterns. And so a combination of theta and what we'll say gamma, that's what you get to in that stage, is now the brain is saying, uh-oh, let's change right now. And that's how quickly it happens. If your eyes widen too, that's it. Now, I think there was one other question here is can you manually alter your brainwave state? You can, but there's something very important you've got to remember about your brain, and it's this. So let's do a quick logic thing. Bear with me. This is going to suck for a second, but it will make sense. Statement: all dogs are brown. Fact: Spot is a dog. Does that mean Spot is brown? Absolutely, it does. That's exactly what that means. Let's go back. All dogs are brown. Spot is brown. Does that mean Spot is a dog? No. It doesn't work that way. Spot could be anything. He could be a cat. He could be a piece of wood. There are tons of brown things that aren't dogs. So this is a logic thing that we say it's a one-way logic statement. It works one direction, but you can't flip it to the inverse. So let's do another one. When I'm stressed, my heart beats fast. Right now I'm stressed. Does that mean my heart is beating fast? Absolutely it does. When I'm stressed, my heart beats fast. Right now my heart is beating fast. Does that mean I'm stressed? No, doesn't work that way. I could be working out. I could be with a girl. Who the heck knows what's going on with it? So now let's go to the brain. When I'm learning, my brain is in theta mode. Right now I'm learning. Does that mean my brain is in theta? Absolutely. When I'm learning, my brain is in theta mode. Right now, my brain is in theta mode. Does that mean I'm learning? No. It's a really logical, weird thing that we cannot seem to drive the brain from the outside. I can use TMS, I can use TDCS, I can use all these tools to get your brain into a very specific state. But if you choose not to engage with learning, it doesn't matter. It will not change. So it's the same thing with dopamine. When you're learning, dopamine floods your brain. Cool. I can flood your brain with dopamine, but if you choose not to learn, you won't learn anything. So it's important to recognize that we can drive our brain through choices we're driving it all the time, but it's nothing as easy as we're ever going to get a cap where if you put this cap on, you're magically going to learn. You still have to put in the time and the effort and the work. When you put in the time and the effort and the work, that cap might help you get there easier, might help you get there quicker, but it cannot drive the outcome you're hoping. You still have to put in the effort. That's why sleep learning will never work. That's why brain stimulation by and large has failed miserably. It's because we kind of thought, when the brain is, when you're doing this, the brain is in that state. Therefore, I'm just going to put you in that state and the same outcome will happen. Nope. It's kind of reflecting your state more than it is driving your state. So we can alter it. There are ways to do it. And that was my whole PhD. I just did brain stimulation. It's just not as easy as anyone thinks. And you can drive it just fine without any tools or devices. You can do it yourself just by thinking. Does that all kind of make sense? I have a tendency to waffle, sorry. All right, I think there's one more question. Thank you. Well, that was wonderful. That is not a question. I'll take that comment. Well, thank you guys all so much for hanging out with me. I have got to go to the store now. It is Sunday morning where I'm at, so I've got to do some grocery shopping. But thank you guys for hanging out. I hope you all learned something. You got any questions that come up over the next couple of days or whatever, feel free to shoot me an email and I'll get right back to you. Cool.
Thank you so much for speaking with us.
Cool. Thanks, y'all. I'll see you guys
Thank
later. Have a
you.
good day. Bye, y'all.